Hello viewers, today we are going to read the poem written by Henry Derozio, To My Native Land. The objectives of the poem are to illustrate the poet's love towards India, to show how poetry encouraged people to express their love towards Mother India during the freedom struggle, to study the selfless patriotic feeling in a sonnet structure. Henry Louis Vivian Derozio was born on 18th April 1809 and died on 26 December 1831. He was an Indian poet and assistant headmaster of Hindu College, Kolkata, a radical thinker, freedom fighter and social reformer. He was one of the first Indian educators to disseminate Western learning and science among the young men of Bengal. His father, Francis Derozio, was a well-respected man in the Anglo-Indian community. He quit school at the age of 14 and initially joined his father's concern at Kolkata and later shifted to Bhagalpur. Inspired by the serenic beauty of the banks of the river Gangas, he started writing poetry. This was the time when Hindu society in Bengal was undergoing considerable turmoil. In 1828, Rajaram Mohan Roy established the Brahma Samaj, which kept Hindu ideals but denied idolatry. This resulted in a backlash within Orthodox Hindu society. It is in the perspective of these changes Derozio was appointed at Hindu College, which helped him realize the ideas for social change already in the air. In May 1826, at the age of 17, he was appointed a teacher in English literature and history at the Hindu College. Young people of conviction who were prepared to make any sacrifice for the cause of freedom. The Harp of India, To India My Native Land, and Fakir of Junagadh are among his best known writings. His poems are regarded as an important landmark in the history of patriotic poetry in India. His ideas had a profound influence on the social movement that came to be known as the Bengal Renaissance in early 19th century. Derozio's intense zeal for teaching and his interaction with students created a sensation at Hindu College. He organized debates where ideas and social norms were freely debated. In 1828, he motivated his students to form a literary and debating club called the Academic Association. He was generally considered an Anglo-Indian, being of mixed Portuguese descent, but he was passionate and had patriotic spirit for his native Bengal and considered himself Indian. Long after Derozio's death, his influence lived on among the former students, who came to be known as Young Bengal and many of whom became prominent in social reform movements, law and journalism. Indian poetry in English is interesting not only in its theme but also the technique and style. The theme is usually Indian. It deals with the various aspects of human emotions and social behavior. It beautifully delineates the patriotic zeal for breaking the shackles of slavery, rights, customs, mysticism, and a theme of underlying unity amidst diversities. It also dwells upon the theme of spiritual bliss and harmony. A strong affinity of rootedness and a nostalgic touch of tradition and motherland which always nurse and nourish the sentiments of the poets. To India, my native land, is a lyrical sonnet. A sonnet is a poem of 14 lines which follows a particular type of rhyme scheme and gives ample opportunity to the poet to pose a problem and resolve in the last 2 lines. Sonnet is a form of a poem that originated in Europe, mainly in Italy. It contains 14 lines. The term sonnet derives only from the Octavian word sonnet and the Italian word sonetto, both meaning little song or little sound. By the 13th century, it is signified a poem of 14 lines that follows a strict rhyme scheme and specific structure. Shakespearean or English sonnet consists of 14 lines, each line containing 10 syllables and written in iambic pentameter, in which a pattern of an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable is repeated 5 times. The rhyme scheme in a Shakespearean sonnet is AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, G, G. Last 2 lines are a rhyming couplet. The structure of a typical Italian sonnet of this type included 2 parts that together form a compact form of argument. First, the octave forms the plan, a sestate which proposes a resolution. Typically, the 9th line creates what is called the turn or volta, which signals the move from propositions to resolution. Even in sonnet that do not strictly follow the problem resolution structure, the 9th line often marks a turn by signaling a change in the tone, mood or stance of the poem. Later, the AB, BA, AB, BA pattern becomes the standard for Italian sonnets. For the seste, there were 2 different possibilities, CD, E, CD, E and CD, CC, DC. In the time, other variants on this rhyming scheme were introduced, such as CD, CD, CD. The Indian poets could not glorify India in the poems, but they only wrote poems on the tragic trail of India's present misery under the British colonialism. In the octave of the poem, Derozio laments the loss of glory and reverence of his beloved country, India. The sorrowful strain of the poem carries the poet's deep distress at the India's misery. The poet comes to a decision and offers his selfless labor to his prized country and attempts to salvage her from the abject abyss of ruinization. In the sestate, the poet's intention is to comprehensively explore the past history of India and to write poems on a few glorious and esteemed epochs from the chronicles of Indian history. My country, in thy day of glory past. A beauteous halo circled round thy brow, and worshipped as a deity thou wast. Where is that glory? Where that reverence now? Thy eagle pinion is chained down at last, and growling in the lowly dust art thou? Thy minstrel hath no wreath to weave for thee, save the sad story of thy misery. Well, let me dive into the depths of time and bring from out the ages that have rolled a few small fragments of those wrecks sublime, which human eyes may never more behold. And let the guerdon of my labour be, my fallen country, one kind wish from thee. Henry Desrosiers' poems is nationalist in spirit, suitably Indian in use of myth and imagery. This is a sonnet of 14 lines with 3 quatrains and an ending couplet. The rhyme scheme AB, 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 CC, DE, DE, FF is a variation on the Shakespearean. In the poem My Native Land, Desrosiers personifies India and talks to her in a monologue. He talks about the glorious past of India. This shows he was obviously unhappy with the British rule in India. He wishes to bring back the glorious past of India by diving into the depths of time and bringing back small fragrance of those wrecks sublime. Basically, Desrosiers' poems recalls a vision of reality that is the opposite of what is being experienced. He understood much about the true nature of Hindustan, or the nation before European colonization. In the poem, there is an extolling of the pre-colonial virtues in harsh contrast to the realities of colonization. The poem has many lines that indicate the reverence of the past. An example of this would be the opening lines, which describes the nation before colonization as a beauteous halo, and experiences such as glory and reverence are felt. At the same time, this is placed in stark contrast with the experience of India being colonized, where one experiences the beloved nation as one where the nation groves in the lowly dust, or the freedom of the eagle has been chained down at last. The narrator prays to his motherland as the deity, his country India in her days of glorious past. There was a beautiful radiance surrounding the head of a holy person, worshipped as a deity, a god or goddess. Her eagle pinion, the outer part of bird's wing, including the flight feathers, tie or hold the arms or legs off, cut off the pinion off to prevent flight, is chained down at last, her fame and fortune soaring to the heights of the flight of the eagle, and growling, couch or crawl abjectly on the ground, act obsequiously to obtain forgiveness or favor. In the lowly dust, as she is now, her minstrel, a medieval singer or musician had no wreath to weave for her to save the sad story of her misery. The poet wants to dive into the depths of time, to project to the world all the records about history and archaeology, also to bring down from the ages that have rolled in past, as to how when India placed itself on the map of the ancient and medieval world, and its significance to other coexisting civilizations. A few small fragments of these wrecks, sublime, of such excellence, grandeur, or beauty as to inspire great admiration or awe, extreme or unparalleled, which human eye may nevermore behold, and let the guerdon, a reward or recompense of his labor be his fallen country. One kind wish for his motherland, India, he has is the absolute freedom from every yoke of slavery, mental, physical, and spiritual. His countrymen should not be contented with existing circumstances, but free themselves into the independent world. In the second part, that is, the last 6 lines of the sonnet, the poet comes with an answer to his distress. He consoles himself, saying that he wants to get back the past glory of India. Derozio therefore wishes to bring back that glory by writing about the past of India, which Mother India has lost. This glorious past may be forgotten with time and people, and may never get to see or read about the past glory again. As a reward of his labor, he prays to his country to grant his wish. He visualizes the return of the past glory and pride. He consoles himself by saying that he will write about the past glory of Mother India. His wish was to see India as a free country which has got rid of the British. The poet demonstrates his selfless patriotic feelings by asserting that he expects no worldly rewards for his efforts to regain the glory of his country. He wishes to have only the loving blessing of his motherland. The main theme of the poem is patriotism. The poet laments the degradation and devaluation of India because of her slavery to the British and seeks to regain India's lost glory and reverence. If we look into the first 4 lines, we see that the poet expresses his love towards India, and he expresses unhappiness towards the British rule because India has lost her past glory. The poem begins with a grief-stricken utterance, "My country," that reverberates throughout the poem. The poet, with a heart beaming with sorrow, grieves over the lamentable and nightmare scenario of the present India. India is trodden under the British feet. Derozio, in his monologue, talks to Mother India and tells that once India was worshipped as a godly being. He talks about the glorious past of India. He questions India how she lost all her grandeur. In the past history, we see the invaders wrote and spoke about the glory of India. The profound patriotic fervor of the poet finds expression in his passionate address. The poet then exclaims rhetorically, where the glory and reverence that India enjoyed in the past has vanished. My fallen country is a figure of speech called apostrophe. Apostrophe is a rhetorical device that addresses things which are personified, absent people or abstract ideas. Apostrophe is often used to convey extreme emotions. In the next 4 lines, the poet employs some images of death, dust, and wreath to communicate to the readers the worthless and meaningless as well as demoralized conditions of India under the British dominance. The writing in the poem is compared using a concealed metaphor to the weaving of a wreath. In the past, the poet used to compose and sing songs of praise glorifying the greatness of India. Now the poet can no more write these tributes since India is in a miserable state, having lost all its glory and divine status of the past. These lines show how the poet compares India to an eagle. It is believed that in the early days of British rule, foreigners referred to India as the golden eagle or the golden bird, as it was very rich and one of the largest producers of gold and diamonds. Foreign invaders were impressed by the riches and the generosity that India offered. But the same bird that is India is chained down. Now it is in the hands of the Britishers. With the invasions and the later with the British rule, and also with internal weaknesses which brought the country to slavery and also demolished its pride and identity. This thought is clearly conveyed in the above line by the poet. There was an acute sense of hopelessness due to lack of freedom and stagnation in the standards of living. There was no garland now to decorate her. That is, now there is nothing that can be praised about her. He says that there is nothing more to write apart from the current situation of the country. These lines show the pain or the distress of the poet about Mother India. There was a time when its grandeur was spoken about far and wide, but now she was chained and only her slavery was discussed. To India, my native land, is one of the best poems of Derozio. In this poem, Derozio expresses his grief over the past glory of India. The country has lost itself altogether. In the past, when the country enjoyed respect and power among the countries of the world, she was almost worshipped by others. Her greatness was accepted by all, but the present appears gloomy to the poet. Her former glory has disappeared. The monster of slavery has devoured everything. The poet wants the world to know the glorious past of India through his song. In fact, the poem is full of noble sentiments of patriotism. What makes poetry enduring is the fact that its content can revolve around many facets of life. Its feelings, dreams, desires, etc. After India freed itself from the stronghold of the British Empire, many leaders and writers have come up with influential poems. Poems have a special appeal and a rhythmic effect, especially patriotic poems and poems on one's own country, which has a strong magnetic power, and we cannot help but go back to the past when our great leaders were fighting for freedom. Poems take us to the depths of the poet's heart and gives us a clear perception to their view on certain aspects. The poems on India's independence have a patriotic vibe, and a real essence of the country's automatically gets transferred through them. There are numerous such poems written by the famous writers. Each of them is endowed with a charm of its own. Hope viewers, you have enjoyed this class. We have learnt in detail the theme, the style and the technique used by the poet in the poem. Thank you and see you in the next class.